What's up, War Report family? We are back with another great edition of the Auburn Express podcast, powered by the War Report. Joining me is one of my favorite people who's ever lived, does life at a high level, Taylor Davis, sideline reporter for ESPN, but also former Auburn graduate. Taylor, before we get started, how's everything going? How's life been?
Things are good. Heck of an intro, Mike. I got to say, I really appreciated that one. But things are good. I mean, you and I were speaking before we started recording. I'm in absolute denial that we're already on week 7 of college football. I'm very confused how it's gone as quickly as it has. The chaos has probably helped with some of that. But yeah, things have been good. Just continuing the grind of college football season. And here we are at the halfway mark. It's pretty wild.
Speaking of chaos, lots of chaos on the plains right now. What's going on at Auburn? The Tigers faced off against Georgia last Saturday, and they're on a bye week here. But there were some things that came out of that game that may be a little concerning to Auburn fans. Number one, QB and coach don't seem to be on the same page. Now, you sat with Hugh Freeze earlier this season when he made the switch to Hank Brown. He's decided to go back to Peyton Thorne. It seems like those guys are having some communication issues. Taylor, what do you make of what's going on the plains right now between coach and quarterback?
It's very confusing, Mike, because this situation was committed to months ago. This isn't a new guy. This isn't a new head coach. This isn't a new bond that the two of them were supposed to have, so much so that the offense hitched its wagon, a wagon that was increased with talent and huge recruits in the offseason because of the belief in Peyton Thorne. So why are we all sitting here confused? Because honestly, we knew what we had in Peyton. And I'm less concerned with who was right in the 4th and 1 debacle. I'm more concerned with what you just said, which is why are head coach and QB1 not on the same page when we're in year 2 of this? And I really don't understand. And look, we're no longer in a day and age where we can control what players are doing out in the media with interviews and publicity and things like that. That's part of NIL. They're all establishing their own brand now. I get that. But it is very disconcerting that they're both publicly speaking about it in different manners days after the game. Why has this not been handled in-house? Why are you continuing to give the public ammo that feeds the narrative that Auburn is in disarray? It really is feeding into the truth. You can see it in game. You can see it on the sidelines. I've seen it on the sidelines. And now you're seeing it on media platforms. So I really don't like it. I think it's a bad look. And given the season that Auburn is having on the field, I think it really goes hand in hand that things are not copacetic right now. And when this coaching staff, an offensive-minded coaching staff, saw enough or thought they did in Peyton to commit to him as publicly and as wholeheartedly as they did, now 6 weeks in, it being the thing that's getting the guns and arrows, I'm a little confused. What did you think you had? Because it didn't look a lot different. No offense to Peyton. It doesn't look a lot different than it did last year when you're looking at the quarterback.
Yeah, I was taken back by the scene on the sidelines after that 4th and 1 at the start of the 4th quarter with Hugh Freeze just reaming out Peyton on the sideline. After the game, he said, "I called a halfback dive left." That's the play was clearly changed. And you talked about those interviews after. You can't control what guys say to the media. You know, he's got to deal with next round where he goes and he talks every week. I don't know how good that is for the team right now. To have your quarterback out there.
I don't think it bodes well for Peyton when you double down on a game-losing pick 6 and say that 10 out of 10 times you would have done the same thing. It's not really given the best individual narrative for him either.
Yeah, media training used to be a thing back in the day. It's why they didn't like them talking to the media. But moving forward, if you're Hugh Freeze, can you fix this? Can you fix what's going on in the plains? In my opinion, you've got to get through the end of the season. And the question now has become, can Auburn make a bowl game? Are there 4 more wins left on this schedule? And can you make it palatable to fans that you improve this roster by every metric? You've got better talent at wide receiver. Your defense is holding Power 5 teams under 400 yards per game, and you've got a worse results on the field. How do you justify those two things?
It's a great question. They're not going hand in hand. I think when you look at even yards per play versus scores per game. Like this is not a story that makes any sense. And so it is almost impossible to not question what's going on internally, because I'm not saying that all of the hype around Auburn was necessarily warranted or that we had justified anything. As ridiculous as some of these young guys are, they are young. Like it is impossible that they are not going to have some learning pains as we go forward in this. But what I am saying is that we should not be as detrimental to ourselves as a program in this situation because of what you just said, the talent on this roster, what people believe Hugh Freeze to be able to do in building a program, and the pieces that they have retained that they felt really good about. Are they regretting those decisions? Perhaps. But I think moving forward, this bye week is going to be very telling. And, I think people are now starting to question the culture. In my mind, the culture conversation will be had based on how many guys enter the portal after this year. I think if the train completely falls off the tracks and absolute chaos ensues the rest of the season and guys dip out and don't want to be a part of the future, then yeah, we've got a problem from the inside out. I think what you do moving forward, the fact that Missouri is your next game out of the bye week does give you potential. I think that you maybe need to reevaluate your offensive approach to these games. I know they want to establish the passing game. We got so excited about these targets that we've got. Set up the run to pass. I really believe, especially in the matchup against Missouri, Texas A&M just put up over 367, I believe, yards on the ground against Missouri. This is an opportunity to let your best weapons, which are your backs, go. I even think it benefits your offensive line better. They're way more equipped to set up the run with guys. I think Jarquez's yards, over 70% of his yards are after contact. This ball, let him go. And so I don't think that the line is serving Peyton well, and that they are not allowing much time to set up these long developing pass plays. You talk so much about taking what the defense gives you. You got to take what your own guys are giving you, and you got to work to your strengths. And coming out of the bye week, establishing a ground attack against a Missouri team that has showed some weaknesses, I think reinvigorates this program. Peyton said it. You kind of have to think of it as two separate seasons. Starting now is a new one. If you get off on the wrong foot and it is rinse and repeat with these mistakes, the wheels could fall off. You could lose all momentum that you've been garnering with the recruiting, and the internal buy-in starts to suffer. There is a lot riding on the Missouri game, and I think there should be.
Missouri's beatable.
Missouri's beatable.
I don't know how else to say it to everybody who's listening. Missouri is beatable. Vanderbilt took them to overtime. Vandy pulled off a win for all of college football the following week in Nashville. My favorite scene from that weekend was a guy, Taylor, walking with the goalpost to the river, and he's got his phone out. He goes, "I don't even go here. This is not even my school." But I'll tell you who is planning to go here at Auburn is Deuce Knight. In the midst of all this chaos, they got a huge commitment from a quarterback. So there is still some buy-in.
Yeah.
Kind of touching on what you said, the question I've had is, can this messaging last? Can it hold true for Hugh Freeze? Right. What are you telling recruits about, why to come to Auburn at this point? Are you telling Deuce Knight, if I have you on that field, you run the right play and you do the right thing and you're the hero, and he believes that? Or if you're a recruit, are you seeing maybe some mismanagement in other areas of the program, and you're thinking, maybe there's some other things going on other than they just need a quarterback?
Right. And I think it's very telling that even when Auburn essentially has zero momentum right now as we approach week 7 for what they're doing in season, we may have negative momentum, but recruiting has not faltered, and guys still wanting to invest in being part of the future of this program tells you that there's something they're believing in that honestly is in spite of what we're showing on the field. And it's because when you look across this roster and the guys that are getting actual playing time and the names that we're repeatedly saying for positive reasons, it's young guys. We've talked a lot about the receivers, and I get it. I think Cam Coleman's I'm tempted to believe his shoulder is bothering him a bit more than we're led on to believe. Something's not quite for him the last couple of weeks. I think Malcolm Simmons has proven that maybe he wasn't the one everyone had eyes on, but they should. Perry and Bryce are going to need to come into their own a little bit. I think they're still learning a lot. I was on the sideline a few weeks ago and standing next to them, they all look like grown men. Like, it is truly wild. But
yeah.
Raw athletic ability that is absolutely going to serve you well, but you got a lot to learn about SEC defenses. It is just a big boy game that you got to learn from. But then you look at guys like DeMarcus Riddick. Keldrick Faulk's a sophomore. We talk about him like he's this proven vet because he has done a lot in his 1.5 years on the Plains, but he's a sophomore. Connor Lew, sophomore. All of these guys, DeMarcus Riddick, I don't know if I said him, these guys that we're talking about over and over for positive reason are young. They're the future. And so if I'm a recruit, I'm looking at what this has the potential to be, not what it is right now. And weirdly enough, the guys that we are talking about with somewhat of criticism or reluctance are the older guys. And you know the reality, other than Keandre Lambert-Smith, who, what a get. I mean,
oh my goodness, best pickup in the portal probably anywhere in college football.
Those guys are moving on. And so I think what the coaching staff is selling to recruits is what you're about to create. We're not asking you to come be, in the shadow of some of these ridiculous guys that have already paved the path. We're asking you to be the change. And if I'm a competitor, if I'm a big 5-star, I want to be the change. I don't want to get lost in the shuffle like we see so many guys do out of high school.
Yeah, some big wins down the stretch would help. Auburn closes out with Missouri on the road, Kentucky on the road. You've got ULM at home. You've got Vandy, who suddenly looks like a giant slayer. And then you close out with Texas A&M and Alabama in Tuscaloosa. So are there 4 more possible wins there? I think yes. But something about when you're finding ways to lose games. All right. So can they and will they? Maybe 2 different conversations. Taylor, I just want to close out asking you that question. Does Auburn make a bowl game here from 2 and 4 mid-October?
My co-host and good friend Jason Campbell always says I'm a bit cynical, and I like to think of it as being a realist because I've been an Auburn fan for so long. With all due hope, and I will be pulling for my team as much as I possibly can, I don't see it for Auburn this year. I think when you look at the remaining schedule, you look at what Kentucky has pulled off. I think Kentucky's defense is one of the most stout in the SEC. I don't think they got the credit they deserved until recently. Mizzou on the road, I told you, I'm putting a lot in that. I think if we lose that one, I'm really concerned about what the remainder of the weeks are going to entail. Texas A&M, I believe in. I think Mike Elko is one of the best hires that A&M could have gotten. I still think that Bama is going to be in the playoff conversation at the end of the year. The loss to Vanderbilt, I got to be honest, not entirely surprising because Diego Pavia is just one of those guys. I don't care how prepared you are. This guy makes it up as he goes. You can't prepare for somebody that's that spontaneous and is that great with improvisation. And that's something that we saw in the Bama game. So honestly, and ULM just beat JMU, who beat the brakes off North Carolina. So I'm seriously looking at the rest of this with hesitation. And that's a really bad place to be in as an Auburn fan, because when you look at the losses we've had, you do feel like a few differences, a few plays here and there, maybe not necessarily the Georgia game, but certainly Arkansas and Cal, they go your way. But the way you're sitting right now and feeling like you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop, you never can breathe a sigh of relief. Even in the Oklahoma game, you never felt like we were fully taken away with that, because this team is almost playing in a worried state that something's about to fall off. And so if that approach doesn't change in this bye week, I unfortunately don't see Auburn making a bowl game this year, and the future is going to have to take priority. But even with a guy like Deuce Knight heading to the Plains, I think a top, if not the top priority of this coaching staff when this season is over is hitting the portal for a quarterback.
Yeah, hopefully they've saved their NIL change, because that's going to cost them probably a cool $1 to $1.5 million to get a guy in that is going to be can't miss and maybe can be a bridge year to your Deuce Knight. Exactly. Or whoever you have waiting in the wings. It was very frustrating, Taylor. I think watching this weekend, it felt like everyone was getting in on the upset game. Mm-hmm. Vandy, Texas A&M, even Arkansas beating Tennessee. Yeah, and so the wins are out there to be had. Can Auburn get on that train and steal some wins here over the second half? we're going to have our eyes on it. We're going to have our eyes on you. Where can we find you? Tell people where they can find you.
Well, every week I'm on a different game. This week, weirdly enough, I will be on Missouri's game. They are headed up to UMass in one of the weirdest combos I've ever heard, but it'll be interesting to see how they respond out of the A&M loss and then before the Auburn game. So I'll be cleared in on that. And then on social media, you can find me at Taylor Beth Davis on all platforms. Jason Campbell and I also have an Auburn podcast, Believe in Everything Auburn, that we put out episodes weekly.
Guys, that's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express podcast with my girl, Taylor Davis. If you want more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. PW Report on TikTok. Signing off, and as always, War Eagle.